Hello, and thank you for joining us. My name is Derek Marinos, Manager of Media Relations and Communications for CGI's operations in Canada. Very happy to be your moderator for what's going to be a fun conversation about open finance and how financial institutions might adapt a strategy of human-centric design to accelerate innovation. Now, when it comes to open finance, everyone is focused on the technology components, what's needed, the APIs, etc. But we're losing sight of the reason that open finance is being implemented in the first place: service for your customers. Today, we'll explore what human-centric design could provide organizations, how a human-centric design strategy would be incorporated into a business, and how it may accelerate innovation and improve customer experiences. Got a great panel of guests to break it down for us. Nidhi Laroiya is a Director of Business Consulting with CGI in Toronto and leads the strategy and change team within the Canada Industry Solutions Group and is a leading expert in human-centric design. And David Hooper, he's the Vice President of Open Banking and Payments Consulting with CGI. David is also based in Toronto, as well as being one of CGI's leading experts in open banking and open finance. Welcome to you both.
Great, thank you, Derek.
Nidhi, I'd like to start with you. Please explain to me, what is human-centric design?
Most definitely. So human-centric design actually stems from the design thinking process. Simply put, it's a way to solve problems for organizations that puts the human at the core of everything we do. I think you mentioned before, oftentimes we are focused on long strategies, big projects, and we're going, and we stop and think about who is it that we're solving for. Sometimes we lose track of that. And with human-centered design, you never do that. It's an opportunity to deeply empathize with the individuals that you're solving for, get quite creative in your problem solving, is to see how can you solve very complex, grand challenges, and ideate with a set of diverse thinkers to really try to stretch your thinking and solve what's right for customers. As well as it allows you to rapidly iterate quite a bit when you are testing new solutions for customers, and have a focus on continuous improvement as you deliver new solutions to clients. And I think that a lot of organizations right now are adopting more of the human-centric design approach to be competitive, as well as to help in areas of ambiguity. When we don't necessarily know all the answers, really sticking back to the humans that we want to solve for is something concrete. So that's a little bit about human-centric design in a nutshell.
No, it's a nice summary there. And you mentioned problem solving a bit, and that leads me to my next question. How does it approach problem solving? I think that's very unique and pretty interesting.
Definitely. As I mentioned, when you have moments of ambiguity or you're in areas you just don't know what the outcomes are, there's so many things you can solve for. You can attach yourself to the latest tech trend. You can find market insights and try to hang your hat and kind of take bets on your future. Where human-centric design is a problem-solving approach that focuses on the humans you're solving for and the problems you're solving for. So really, by identifying and defining and empathizing what friction points, what stresses, what huge areas of opportunity there are when it comes to just developing enhanced human experiences, you're able to really quickly pinpoint what are the challenges you want to solve, and then you can kind of focus on how you solve that problem. So definitely it is an approach to problem solve, and it's an area of complexity and ambiguity.
Now, I'd like to bring both of you in for this one. Why adopt this approach for open finance?
Yeah, well, I'll build on what Nidhi just said. When you talk about that empathizing with the customer and keeping the customer centric and all that, it fits in beautifully where with what we've seen and heard in terms of open banking and open finance in particular. The focus is really on providing innovation in the market. That's great. Increased competition, that's great too. And new services to really help people with their financial well-being. And I think as long-standing players in the industry, we often think we know what the customer needs or wants, but we may not necessarily know it exactly. And when you present it, they go, "Oh, that was nice, but what I really wanted was this." And I think what Nidhi's just described is a way to, an approach that helps you not only force you to understand your customer better, interact with them more on the front end to understand their needs, but then to actually do a very good job at customizing the solution to meet that, right? So that's what I hear when Nidhi talks about that. I'm seeing we're not building a single product for the entire world, you start to look at it in markets, in segments, into personas, and take it down to that customer level. So you're really hitting the mark with what you're trying to provide them.
And Nidhi, really, this is essentially you're really providing the customer what they want in the end, no? Like you're getting closer to them.
Yeah. And it gives organizations the right to play. Sometimes I think you see some products coming from brands and you're like, I didn't realize they were into that, or feels a little awkward. But with human-centric design, because the process is so deeply focused on empathizing with those grand challenges, the organization takes it on to really try to solve it with compelling solutions. It feels much more organic, and you got it right. You're getting it right. And even if you don't get it right, you're quickly learning and you can, very quickly get it right the second or third round. So definitely.
And speaking of getting it right, I mean, how would an organization implement this strategy?
Yeah, it does. It's different than a traditional waterfall approach, or when we're thinking about launching a new product or service. Definitely, it doesn't happen with a small set of people in a boardroom, and you don't work on it for 2 years and then expose it to the client after a 2-year production. It's much more rapid in movement, much more fluid of a process. It's not linear by any means. So adopting that type of idea of constant curiosity is something new for some organizations to really identify and work with the customers as you're building the product. So not worrying about getting it perfect behind the curtains and then unveiling is it a big launch, but really showcasing the solution as you're going and getting customer feedback along the way, and being okay to fail in safe environments and quickly iterating and learning. That process I'd see is sometimes something new, depending on a lot of organizations are adopting this type of way of working, very resilient way of working for future settings. So I think that would be the first step in how we adopt a human-centric design in organizations.
I think it would make organizations more agile as well, too.
Almost hand in hand, most definitely. I think
Fair
David
enough.
said as well, when it comes to innovation, definitely a great recipe when trying to innovate something new.
So what are the challenges then for organizations who want to adopt a human-centric design moving forward?
So I think that appetite for risk is something that I think we have to get used to, and doing it in safe spaces, of course, right? In smaller settings and in areas where you know that you may have not gotten it right when you were managing those expectations and you're creating those environments. That's really important. Getting close to the right customers as well. Again, so much of our brainstorming happens not with the individuals that we're solving for, involved in that process. So we really want to make sure we have a diverse set of thinkers when we are trying to ideate around those solutions, and prototyping in a way that scales. I think sometimes design thinking, human-centric design gets a bad rap in the corporate environment because we just think of pie in the sky and Post-its. But the real value of human-centric design comes with the testing and the implementation. So making sure that it doesn't just stop at the ideation session, but you really have the rigor around business casing, ensuring you have the right resources, and they're quite nimble. It doesn't take a lot of money, but ensuring that you have those right expectations and you develop the right KPIs along the way to ensure that you're tracking your progress. Those, I think, are the common challenges that you don't often think about with these like wide set brainstorm sessions, but those are the type of discipline you need in order to move it forward.
And David, on the ground, where do you think Open Finance is right now with embracing this kind of vision moving forward? Do you see it in the near short term? Are you seeing enough of it with what you're hearing?
We're probably not seeing enough of it, but I expect to see more of it as we go along. I think that's certainly been one of the challenges that we've seen globally, is really understanding those customers and putting the right services out there. And I think the reflection or the track record we've seen of open banking, open finance in other countries is in the adoption. It's a combination of the right services at the right time, and then the ability to use them wherever you need to have the security in mind, the education levels that are there. But I think the design thinking helps us start with the basic use cases, and everyone's been talking about what are the right use cases, and then move it or progress it past the pure use case and look at the different, it's the segments really, of which customer groups are you focused on. And it can't be the same for all of them. You've got to differentiate it by customizing it, or it's got to be more customized to the needs of those segments. And I think the design thinking will definitely be part of that, because as Nidhi says, it's really that understanding. And then don't be afraid to fail a couple of times. Get it out in the market. Often, I mean, traditionally in banking, we don't go to, or at least 90% at end of job, and then out it goes. And then we find out later that, oh, well, we had 3 of the 4 functions that customers want, and we didn't get that last one. And then it's, well, it'll be a year before we do the next upgrade, right? Whereas over the last any number of years, 5, 6, 8 years, we're seeing this agility coming into place and that iterative approach. And it's more than just changing a button from red to blue on a mobile app. It's the actual functionality and getting to that spot where it's very intuitive, it's easy to use, because that allows customers that are not necessarily as sophisticated to make use of these tools. And that's really who you're aiming at, right? We're trying to level the playing field to give everyone the same opportunities to improve their financial life, what have you, control it, manage it, and just progress with the same opportunities in the end that everyone else has.
So it seems like a pretty, like you mentioned, intuitive approach, but organizations clearly can benefit from this approach, right, Nidhi?
Almost definitely. We're seeing a lot of that as well, even in internal operations. Right now, even everything from employee wellness to increasing, talent retention and acquisition is really important. So we're really finding just the whole idea of experience design. Really, what does that mean? And how can we reduce friction and create more of those moments of delight? And we just want stick factor, right? Whether it's in our employees or our customers, we want to be able to grow. So we're seeing a lot of great successes. Again, it's not an easy approach. It's sometimes difficult for large organizations that are riddled with lots of processes and red tape to be able to release new solutions quickly. But this process really helps do that.
And it goes beyond like the product level. We tend to think it's those who are producing products, but it lends itself to much higher up the organization with the actual creation or refinement of strategy,
100%.
and then bring it all the way back down. So it can fit and work at multiple levels within those organizations. But from my viewpoint, I've seen it more often at the product level, and Nidhi, hopefully, you've seen it at the higher levels, and that's probably what we're all aspiring to.
Mm-hmm. Especially, I think, when you have these moments of open finance, right? That's that idea, these moments of great innovation, where we're looking at competition. There's some question marks. How are we going to compete? How are we going to create, new waves of business, whether it's top line growth or just simple retention? That comes from the strategy level, right? So how applying human-centric design within those conversations really has a huge benefit.
Right.
And I think I was going to say, I think one of the big opportunities I see is not just the product or the strategy, but it's in the business models. That we have a traditional business model. We tend to work in that in the confines of that, and we may attempt to try other ones. But I think we can, because you can customize at such a sort of micro level, you can actually experiment with multiple models at the same time to see which one works best for certain segments or for the institution itself. And I think that's really an interesting idea of playing with it, to look at these models and everything from the fee structures to the way we present information or the way we provide our products and services. I mean, just the idea of we're letting go of the concept that we have to build everything ourselves and present it in our own channels, and that we can work with partners not just to fill gaps, but to actually provide brand new services that we either can't do quick enough or hadn't conceived of. So I mean, I'm really excited about getting to that sort of level of design thinking beyond products and into the business models.
And of course, there's going to be plenty of benefits for consumers as well. We've talked about how organizations can benefit. Let's talk now and drill down on consumers.
Well, it's obviously we want to move away from one size fits all. Everything from the way we interact with you, the offers we put in front of you should all be highly personalized. And I think we've got that opportunity. I mean, we've been talking about in marketing circles for decades about the marketing to the one. Well, we have enough data and information within your average bank and credit union that with a little analysis, we can create, far more personas than 2 or 3 or 4. You can have far more segmentation and customize, because it's all digital, customize the offerings for those groups, if not the individual themselves. And I think the benefit is that the customer feels that, hey, you know me, you understand what I need, that it's not generic, that I feel like you're talking directly to me, but then the services themselves, because they're tailored to them, they'll feel like, hey, not only have you understood, but you've given me something that's useful to me. right? So I feel like I've got a voice, and consumers will obviously they'll gravitate to those sort of offerings, and hopefully there's an improvement that they can recognize and accept and would say that has been valuable to them.
That's interesting. And Nidhi, with such a plurality of audience profiles that could come from this, and to David's point in terms of the benefits of being a customer, being seen and being heard, I mean, for any organization, and of course the consumer, there's tremendous value in there.
Most definitely. And especially with banking and financial services, any opportunity to make it either simpler, faster, or better feels like an aha moment, right? A differentiated, because we're very used to similar experiences in this space. So I guess in any organization or bank, financial service, credit union who wants to create a differentiated experience by making it simpler, faster, or better is going to have a great start, because it is very refreshing. And those are moments that matter, especially making it going beyond banking, thinking about just the simple transactions we do, but how does that feed into family planning? How does that feed into moving to a new destination? How does that plan into? So I think that's where we see other organizations. And I was just talking about the example earlier about Uber. Now when I order Uber Eats and I'm waiting for my takeout, it suggests the types of groceries that I might need on the way. They can just pick that up for me. That moment to me was incredible. And the type of groceries were actually quite similar in terms of what I would need. So I just think those moments in financial services can go a very long way.
No, it can. And you mentioned simpler, faster, better. And that's a really nice segue to innovation as well, because innovation needs to happen in order for us to get there. And that, it's a really nice segue to our next segment. And the question here would be, how would an organization begin with human-centric design approach to innovation?
Definitely. I think that it all depends. It has to be strategically aligned to the organization. I sometimes find that, design thinking sometimes loses steam when we try to solve for the wrong thing. And we always want to ensure we're solving for the right segment, as David is clearly saying. And even from that segment, we want to make sure we're solving the right challenges from those individuals, but it needs to be strategically aligned to where your business wants to go. So, definitely ensure what the overreaching strategy is. What are those metrics and KPIs of where we want to be in the next fiscal or 2 or 3 years? And attach how we are able to solve human problems to get us there faster. So that, I think, is the first step to ensure that we're solving for the right things and it really makes sense for the organization.
Yeah, and that ability to innovate and carry back to what we just on the last set of topics, it's that broadening beyond banking into finance or financial services. I mean, as you mentioned, helping you determine how you save for goals or anything like that. I think part of the innovative, or part of what innovation will do, will act as a launch pad for those outside what we traditionally call the banking space. Look at it broader into financial services. Okay, you've got banks, you've got credit unions, but there's a lot of insurance companies, there's a lot of wealth companies, all with financial advisors, be it independent, networks or their own staff, all clamoring for access to more data so that they can do that sort of analysis and bring their innovative services to the front. So that equals competition in the market. It could mean a greater rush from all involved to provide, as you said, the right services, solve for the right problems, and for the right groups. And I think that too is a good thing when we have more choice and more selection of excellent products and services that can help us. I mean, I think that's part of that innovative growth. That's part of that mindset and that strategic link. So it's not just the incumbent groups that are working on these strategies. There's others who have been on the periphery or even outside of the tent, all looking for ways to come in. And I think as we move beyond open banking into open finance, and then the next step is beyond finance into open health, open government, open economy, all of these sorts of things, you start to see that we're shifting pretty quickly, and the opportunity to just assist society and push it forward is phenomenal.
That's really interesting, and that acceleration is vital, but there could be some early pitfalls as well to look out for, huh, Nidhi?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, as we were mentioning before, spending a lot of time and resources and money before even testing it or showcasing if we're getting it right or wrong is a common pitfall, I'd say, that corporations often have. Even validating if we're solving the right challenge. So ensuring that, again, that the right audience is there as you're going through this process is critical. And it's different than a focus group, right? It's different than here, test this product and let's get the feedback, which what we're used to. It's actually having those segments part of the dialogue so they can give us feedback in real time to say, okay, I think this is great and I'm happy you're solving, this problem, but I actually have another problem that's under the burning platform even more. So actually that constant learning and ensuring that we have the customer feedback and using the right data. Like we don't have to pinpoint it on 2 or 3 individuals giving us feedback. We're sitting on an amazing amount of data. So we're very data rich. Hopefully we can be data rich and insight rich. Sometimes we're data rich and insight poor. So I think that using design thinking and data is often a missed opportunity. But organizations that are doing it well have really been able to combine the two.
No, very much so. Design thinking, analytics, and you integrate the strategy tends to lend itself to a successful campaign and a successful approach as well. There's often some pushback too on the human-centric approach. Could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it before. When you see the post-its and you see the ideation, and even actually the expansive thinking that it takes. Sometimes we think, design thinking is all about divergent thinking, but that's half the equation. Divergent thinking is part of it, but you have to very quickly converge, right? You have to really definitely put something to paper. You have to showcase it. You have to test it and you have to learn from it. Sometimes design thinking stops after the ideation session and people don't know what to do with it. But the best part of design thinking is when you create very strong use cases. And I think we were saying this from open finance, what a moment we're in to create new use cases, right? And actually test those use cases. That's where the value really, really comes, where you're actually saying what's sticking and what's not. And then taking those test models to then be able to scale it accordingly. So I think when you see innovation labs that are really successful, they're able to take idea to proof of concept all the way to commercialization. And it's a lot more rigorous, I'd say, to do the implementation than it is doing the fun brainstorming, but you need to have that commitment all the way through.
Yeah, and once that strategy is kind of put down and there's some exploration in place too, where does the value creation begin?
Definitely when it's showcased to client and clients are interacting or giving that feedback to the actual suggested offering or service. That's, I think, the first step of feedback, because you can actually save a lot of money if you get it completely wrong. Totally fine, right? Start back from the playing field again, versus having to spend so much money to create a polished solution that simply doesn't work.
Yeah, and David, value is important, and it's important to get quick wins, as people say. But we do see perhaps an opportunity here from a proof of concept perspective, especially in open finance, to see quick wins, especially when you go into market.
Yeah, I think that's what everyone's looking for, is to return some sort of value as a quick win, because then that confirms that you're on the right path. Often that would, from inside a financial institution, that opens the doors for further finance and allocation of resources to continue building out. So start small. We talk a lot about minimum viable product, and it really is, what's the minimum I have to put out there that will get a reaction from customers, hopefully a positive reaction, right? A positive reaction from customers that will drive usage. And then what's the next step? What can we add on to drive, even further adoption? I think the value, again, here's where business models meet the service, meet the design thinking of meeting customers' needs. You've got to have that convergence, as Nidhi said. You've got to hit that point where, okay, you're adding enough value that the customer is willing to pay, or to bring it to a point where you can get to a new business model where there are revenues attached to it. We see a lot of new solutions come to market that we need scale before it's ever, we'll monetize it, but until we get to 1 million customers, we're not going to make any money. And we can't do that. We see that time and again, monster valuations with negative revenues, and then it's a matter of how long do they last. But at the same time, we often bring new products to market and we're not sure of it, so we don't charge for them in any way. And that's fine. There's definitely a place for that. But sort of once the horse is out of the barn, that doesn't come back. So it's that fine balance of what's value in terms of what value do I want to provide as part of the relationship that I have, the stickiness factor to keep my customer in love with me. And then, maybe it's the second iteration or the third iteration where we start to introduce some sort of fee or charges of some kind or subscription. And this is where we have to be creative, is that balance between need to drive monetization and equating that directly with the value. I mean, sometimes value is for the relationship with the customer, and you're looking at the long term versus the immediate term revenues and profitability.
I totally agree with that too. Like if you know your customer well enough, you're going to know where they're willing to pay, where they are, right now, the era of convenience and speed is incredible in terms of how much you're willing to pay for that. So I think that when you're thinking about charging and pricing models through design thinking, you actually know where those moments, those high value interactions are and where clients are willing to pay for that.
Yeah.
So that's a great point.
And that's a difficult thing. So I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing more of that. It's we move away from just pure pricing models based on volume and things, and we've been talking about value-based pricing for quite a number of years, but we haven't necessarily known the true value point. It's our interpretation or perception of it. So as you said, Nidhi, it's you have to see the customer react to it, and for them to go, yeah, I would pay for that. Right? When you get that aha moment, now you're onto something. And I guarantee you it's not the first thing that you've done. It's a couple of iterations later where you've really fine-tuned that focus to that value point, as you said. And I think that's a challenge for all of us, is to find what are the right value points. And consumers can be fickle in the sense of, I want it now. I want to be able to do this anytime, any place, on any channel or any device I have. And if it's on a mobile phone or an iPad or whatever, they probably don't want to pay for it, right? There's a lot of things that I expect it to be free. And those expectations have been growing over the years, and we've struggled to meet those expectations while maintaining a business focus on it. And I think there's definitely a train of thought that says doing it for the consumer is table stakes, but it's small businesses and well, let's stick with small business, but also small to medium size. That's maybe where we'll make our money. But it also comes down to, let's make sure that we give the same functionality and capabilities to businesses that we've been giving consumers for years, because often they're different. And it frustrates us. Someone with a small business says, I can do all this, this, and this on my personal life, and I don't have that for my business. So, I mean, there's certainly opportunities for revenues based on delivering value, but it's, the right value to the right people.
And delivering value to people, it's really about connection. And I think that's something that's vital. And I'd like for you to explain the upside of this connection with the customer early on in the process, and a dedication to problem solving with the customer experience in mind. We've touched on some of it, but if we could get a little deeper into it, I think this is really the heart of what we're talking about.
Yeah. Let me throw something just out in front of you, because I think I know where Nidhi will take it. In our voice of the client that we've done for many years, and when we started talking about open banking in other parts of the world, we frequently saw the response that customers are willing to switch providers because they're not that happy with them. They don't know me, they don't understand my problems, they're not providing me those things. Exactly all the things that you just said. And we've seen it time and again that's what they're craving. I want to feel that, that personal touch, that you're hearing me, you're seeing me, and you're giving me something that I find valuable, not just what you think. And I think that's the leap off point or the jump off point. And I think that's what we're all striving for, is to make them understand that we know them. And we've talked about data a few times so far in this conversation. I've got a friend who constantly brings up the fact that none of his financial services providers have figured out that he's a diabetic. They don't see that he's buying insulin. They don't see that he's buying sugar-free jam. They haven't seen none of the offers from his store to his bank seem to understand what he's got, right? And it's just those little things. He said, the first one that figures it out and gives me an offer because they've figured this out, I'm with them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Nidhi, would you like to offer comment on that?
I think it's pivotal, especially for financial institutions, because the value proposition is the advice, right? The products, definitely there's some differentiation there, but it's pretty much very similar, I'd say, but it's the advice that really matters. And we've been relying on, the connection that oftentimes customers would have at the branch with their financial advisor. We need to expand that. We need to expand that to make sure that it's not only done with moments in which an individual has to go to their local branch, make the appointment with their financial advisor to feel like they're being heard and seen. But it's even in the digital experiences. And that's what we can get with, human-centric design and understanding and using the data right. It's tricky. It's a very fine balance between, okay, does it get creepy? I mean, our whole world right now finds it creepy of how
You know too much.
organizations know. So it's a delicate dance, I'd say, right? There needs to be an elegance behind that in terms of when that advice comes, how it comes, and to feel supported. And I think there's a great opportunity there. So thinking about how to digitize that advice in those moments that matter, where you're not having to get that feeling only when you're face to face or you're on the phone or you're chatting, but really just through simple offers and opportunities that can come your way. It's a great opportunity.
It's all about the approach as well. I mean, you mentioned it, and I can't help but be moved by David's example of his friend who has diabetes, and they still can't see this when it's right out under their nose and in front of them. And that approach, I think, is important to highlight. And it's interesting that we're talking about this in the context of open finance, but we still have banks and credit unions out there. I'm wondering how this approach will inspire them to up their game, because they're going to need to.
Yeah. Well, for those that feel they know their client well, we may not see a lot of that. I think we can definitely talk to the credit union world, the cooperative movement. They've claimed to have a fantastic knowledge of their members, right, at a grassroots level, and they're active in the communities, all those things that we've heard for years. They may well be in one of the better or best positioned entities or companies to actually move forward with this because they have that connection. But I think regardless of where you are today, that's got to be your goal going forward, is to truly get to know your customers better than you do today, and to start solving for those. And we'll see those Kodak moments, right? There will be those who think they know and they don't, and it's not going to be overnight. Maybe 3-5 years from now, they're behind the 8 ball, and they're have been surpassed by their competitors and new entrants that they hadn't imagined. And I think we've, if I look globally, the number one service that we have seen appear in every open banking or open finance market has been personal financial management. And it's been that attempt to show that I know you, but to give you advice that you can trust. So I think that's the starting gambit for everybody, is a position there, and then take it further.
That's pretty interesting. Nidhi, do you have anything to offer on that, especially for banks or credit unions?
I think definitely everything David said there in terms of just that customization approach, right, to ensure that individuals feel heard and seen. But I do think there's a tremendous opportunity just to make the processes easier, simpler, easier, and faster.
Never go wrong with that.
Yeah.
I really think so, especially when we are going through such those huge moments of life, whether it's you're buying a house or you're buying your first car, to make that this is a great opportunity to delight the customer, because oftentimes it's like an eye roll, like, oh my goodness, I have to do all of these things, or I'm nervous, I'm not sure. By ensuring that it's easy and even adding a little bit more onto that, just giving a little bit of a sweetness on top of that, I think can go a very long way. And it's not easy. I've worked in banking, financial services for over 10 years. So I understand, the rigor around protecting their clients from a risk perspective, but trying to make the process less cumbersome, I think would be very, very critical.
And that's one of the big expectations we have of open banking and open finance is, it's sure, you've gathered data, you've given me some advice and recommendations. And the thing we've all talked about for years, yet another one, is actionable insights. So I can, here's my recommendation and advice to you, but then we typically, that's where we stop. And we're hoping that open banking and open finance and the capabilities that are coming will allow us to not only give that advice, here's my recommendation, would you like me to help you with that, and take it that next step, so that you don't walk away and they're left with the recommendation, scratching their head going, oh, okay, I guess I have to go somewhere and fill out a form. That we take it that next step and actually walk them through the process so that it's very simple and easy. No more forms, right? Pre-filled everything, shared the data, get them to the point where they've opened an account, moved or signed up for a new service, whatever it is, but take away the work effort, right? Which is part of the friction that turns people off. When we look at e-commerce, you see people have loaded their basket up with lots of goods online, but then the next step in the process is a pain and they just abandon it and walk away. We see that in just general financial services terms. As soon as we go online, if it's the least bit friction filled or complicated or not intuitive, they abandon it. And I think that's the next big wave of opportunity for us, is to get from advice to recommendations to actually taking action and helping them take action.
That altar of disappointment you just talked about, I mean, consumers see it all the time. It is somewhat friction. It looks like it could open a gateway. Is that one part on the customer, or do you think really, the organization needs to do more here?
It could be a little both. I think most of it is on, let's put it on sort of the corporate side. That's not necessarily banks. That's anyone in sort of those food chains.
Right.
Because it's been designed from a technology standpoint. We've put it together to make it simple from our point of view, right? The developer or from the product owner, and not really understanding the customer. I mean, I think I'm sure Nidhi's seen this. There's lots of these famous slides that you see where here's what the designer developed, and you see like a corner, right? Sidewalk. And then here's what the customer did. And there's a beaten path across the grass because they cut the corner. And that's, I love to laugh and joke about that, but that is part of it. You design it one way, the customers will find the way they use it or want to use it. And you've got to react to those things and make these changes. So where we have this sort of friction, the more we can embed these financial services, and again, we're kind of focused on the financial services side, but where I can embed it, where I can take away certain elements of it. I mean, Uber has made payments for a ride seamless. Now, it's not magic, but it's in the background and I don't have to worry about it. All I have to worry about is when's the driver showing up and, how much is it going to cost me? That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And the ability to embed these things or take away those friction points, that goes a long way for the experience. And the experience probably drives as much as anything. If I can make that experience, as Nidhi said, easier, faster, lighter, less friction, enjoyable even, right? Then you'll have more people adopting these new technologies, these new services, and moving forward with it.
Mm.
Yeah, and I honestly don't think that's going to slow down anytime soon. I think there's an exponential rate in which we are seeing experiences around us that are just that much simpler, faster, and better because of technology, because of data. And the expectations are raising for consumers just because they're able to do it when they're ordering food or ordering a ride. That level of expectation is going to be seeped into how I deal with my finances. So I just think that those growing, it's great. It's a great time for us to enjoy all of these, but organizations need to, I don't think there's any organization that's kind of safe from not trying to create those new experiences and level set what we're used to and how we interact with our mobile devices.
No moat is too deep to protect you from the advancing technology. That's for sure.
That is true indeed. Earlier, Nidhi, you mentioned an example, and I think it was interesting about how you ordered some food from Uber, and before you know it, there was a grocery list as well being put forward. It leads me to our next segment here, and I think this is interesting because we're talking about the human-centric approach really now in action. And what are the telltale signs of an organization that is on point when it comes to applying the human-centric approach? You mentioned one before, but I know there's more, and I'd be really interested and lean some more on your expertise here for this.
Yeah, I really think it comes to the point that when an organization or company is offering me something in such an easy way, I'm talking 1 or 2 clicks, to something I didn't know I needed, but I really appreciated it at the moment. I think that is really, really amazing. Because it feels very customized, but in reality, it's not customized. I can only imagine how many others are offered this experience, but it just feels, because the moment is right. It's offering it to me. As I said, the approach in which it's offering it to me, it's very easy. It's very delicate. It's not too abrasive. And it's coming to me at a time that I didn't think that I needed it, but it's there. That to me, I think is really important. And how you get there is by understanding, again, that right segment of your clientele, understanding the problems that you want to solve. And these problems are not easy to solve, because if they're easy to solve, every company would be offering it. It's, I think, these differentiated offerings and in the moments that matter most. And you can really only do that if you're plotting out that experience. You have to identify from when it comes to your customer engagement and interaction, not only what does the engagement and interaction look like when we're dealing with the organization, but what are they doing before? What are they doing while? What are they doing after that experience? So you're broadening your set of opportunities in which you can serve your customer. So I think those are those telltale signs that companies are getting it right.
David, it appears the roadway or the pathway is wide open for open finance here too on that.
Sorry, in what sense?
No, you know what I'm getting at is, like, we've seen some of the consumer products who are starting to get this, like Uber, etc., who are being more intuitive. Open finance has all the data in front of them. No.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, they'd probably argue they don't have all the data. They want more of it. But you're absolutely right. So much of what we're looking at in the future, I mean, is totally dependent upon data. We position it as it gives the consumer the right to protect and control where their data goes, but we tend to forget that I'm not going to give someone permission to use my data unless they've got some whiz-bang service that I'm going to sign up for. So in the end, it is always whoever's providing a service of some form that needs data to complete that service, to make it more fulsome, to make it more wholesome, to give me a broader view and a deeper view of the customer so that I can address those pain points, those unmet needs, those desires that they want. Absolutely. The exchange of data is just the first component of it. It's that analysis. It's that driving to advice and recommendations, and then the ability to actually act on it. We've seen it progress in some of the other countries. Canada, that data will be the starting point. The ability to act on it will come a little later, but that's absolutely the goal: is obtain the right data. It's not all the data, but the right data to deliver that personalized service that actually brings benefit and value to the customer, be it a consumer or a business.
Now, for organizations who are on a transformation journey, so to speak, how vital is it to get the customer's voice tagged into their problem, so to speak, you're trying to solve or going to solve for them and their communities?
I think I've been saying this the whole time. I think that, even spending time in the financial industry and working in innovation labs and then moving to more management business consulting, seeing innovation labs either, soar or just kind of stay stagnant. You see the proof of concepts that are collecting dust, that are just not seeing the light of day. We spent money on them. They look brilliant, but they're just not commercializing. And it's because we're not getting that right customer feedback and we haven't validated it at the right time. So I think that the sooner, the better in terms of getting the customer feedback in there, whether it's you're actually speaking to customers or bringing them along the journey, as well as you're using the data, right, in the right way, is completely critical in order to do this in a way that's cost effective and I think offers the most value.
No, that's true. So what does the road ahead look like for organizations who adopt design thinking?
I think it's more of those moments. You're not only going to see an increase of customer acquisition, but customer retention as well. And I think that's a tough game right now when competition is becoming increasingly fierce. It's that referral rate that you see when you create those differentiated experiences and in the moments that matter most, that there is a ripple effect there. So I think, and that's the very defense it's really strong strategy. People can't replicate that. Other organizations and competitors can't replicate that, right? So I think that's the most beneficial long-term win for organizations that human-centered design.
And there's an element of first mover advantage, and I don't mean quite in the traditional way, but the first one to get it right, as you said, may not be the first to the market. Right? The best mousetrap doesn't always win, but the first one that comes in and is really hitting on those value points, taking away those pain points, removing that friction, providing that better experience, and actually delivering on the value and benefit they promised, they'll gain. There's market share to be gained. There's share of wallet to be gained, right? And it becomes very, very sticky. People will not leave. Oh, that looks good, but I've got everything I need here, right? And they continue to improve and impress me. That's huge for retention, as you said. We'll absolutely take new customers, but to ensure that you retain and grow your existing base, that's a dream.
And David, we always see that as a KPI, 100% customer retention, but the organizations, especially the financial institutions that are doing this strongly, it's woven into the fabric of the culture of the organization to be deeply customer centric. They have, CX strategy is something that it's prevalent in every department of the organization, whether it's not just a business or marketing play. You see it in operations, you see it in the technology world. So internalizing this approach across the enterprise that allows you not to just have those one-hit wonders or from a product perspective, but it's in everything you do. And I think clients feel that as a brand at large.
Well, as you said, I mean, it's fine to talk about a digital transformation, but a cultural transformation, right? Customer centricity has got to be lived and breathed by everybody. It can't just be a moment in time, and it can't be just one group. Certainly not just marketing or those looking after the digital world. It's got to be everybody, right? All focused on, is this right for the customer? We'll figure the rest out later if it's right for the customer.
That, and I think you've hit the nail right on the head. Is this right for the customer? Yes or no? And how do we shed a light on that path? And how do we understand that, David? I think that's the core focus here. And we're always coming back to the page one of being in a business. It's all about the customer, right? I mean,
yeah, isn't that why everyone starts a business? Because
yeah.
they feel they've got something to offer that someone else or no one else is offering to the customers, to the market. And then how do I look after and continue to impress and improve the customer experience, give them more of what they want and need, right? Yeah, no one goes into business just for, I think I just want to make money. Yeah, but how are you going to do that? You've got to have a market in mind.
Yeah, it's amazing, that common sense approach. I'd like to take the conversation now and look at something that we've seen recently over the last couple of years. And when it comes to the future of work, how could human-centric design be applied to improve experiences around the hybrid work model? Really curious.
Yeah, I think we're seeing it. I think we definitely saw it with the pandemic as well. Organizations that were taking new approaches to add to the culture, add to the collaboration in a way that we just weren't used to. Many organizations were used to just being face-to-face. So that was one, as well as I think I mentioned before, organizations that are focused from employee experience to move that now to employee wellness. Human-centric design is a big portion of that. So again, it's not just what the experience is when I'm clocking in and clocking out of my work, but how does this impact me beyond that? And how can I make that easier? And that's, I think, really important. You're seeing experience design all across different organizations, from an employee perspective, from partnerships, screening new partnerships, as well as from customers. So I think experience design is something that is here to stay, especially when a lot of the experiences are not always face-to-face and they're more digital. I think that, again, it's solving the right problems for the right segments of people.
And you're certainly seeing that play out in a number of different ways. I mean, companies that are experimenting with the 4-day work week, companies that are experimenting with, okay, let's go, we've seen lots of companies do it, longer during half of the year, longer hours so that you have shorter hours during the summer. We've seen those. We've seen lots of customers, particularly the banks, completely redoing floors. It's no longer 1970s beige cubicles. They're now into very clean, open spaces. A lot of complain about too open, but a lot of digital technology, multiple monitors in different rooms, different meeting spaces. The hoteling concept, where it's all very clean and open and conducive to teamwork for when the teams are in the office, and also to allow for that global collaboration using media and technology. So we've certainly seen lots of changes in that sense to try and find out what's best for, in this case, the customer is the employee. And then I love what you mentioned about the wellness. Certainly it's been over the last 3 years since COVID began. We've seen far more emphasis and far more offers of programs and support from everything from mental health to physical health to how do we help you survive in this bizarre world of the pandemic. Like it's impressive what we've seen from companies that are focused on their employees. It's not just clock in, clock out, see you later, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a good thing, let's be honest. But there's also a huge potential for economic gains here too.
Definitely. I think that when it comes to retaining talent, the war on talent is really difficult. It's very costly, especially when you're looking at more of the specialized skills in technology, data, and just, the overall development skill sets. It's very costly to train and hire, and then unfortunately lose employees. So retention is a big part of it. So getting it right, and you're right. Smallest things can actually lead to employee satisfaction. I saw a study where they did a study to say the vicinity of office spaces to healthy food solutions. Yeah. So if employees have an access to healthy food options for lunch, they actually had a higher likelihood of staying in that location. So, there are things that do make a difference, again, when you're thinking about the overall wellness and the health, both mental and physical of your staff. Definitely from a cost effectiveness perspective, it makes a difference.
That in itself is pretty incredible. It used to be just, all we had to worry about was, are we close to transportation lines? And now if you're looking for, healthy food and things, as Nidhi said, obviously a huge one is retention. The cost of attracting new talent and then training them and then hoping they stay. We're seeing a market today that it's really difficult to find certain skills, and there are not quite bidding wars, but they're certainly getting multiple offers, and they can pick and choose. Well, okay, your salary offer and your benefit offer is fine, but what are you going to have me working on? They're looking for the more interesting challenges and things. So it's definitely there's an economic impact of looking both negative and positive based on how you treat and look after your internal customers, your employees.
And I think that even the demographics we're in right now, we are faced with aging workforce in many cases, and the talent that we have to think about to retain an organization might be through new acquisition or even cross training. So back to your point, how we create roles that are more dynamic. How do we create them that is more, satisfactory and gives them, more motivation for our existing employees is really important. So I think a whole talent pipeline, I always call it the people plan, is very much needed in any type of transformation. And it's not just for today, it's for the future as well.
And speaking of the future, I'd like to call this crystal ball time now as we look into the future, so to speak, and lean into your expertise to look 24 months down the road. Let's look at a human-centric design and how it could or might look in open finance a couple of years from now. Nidhi, I'd like to see what your vision might be 2 years from now if you had that magic wand, and how that approach would work.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think again, there definitely is no crystal ball, but just from the signs that I'm seeing right now, I think there's going to be more opportunity for financial services to go beyond banking and solve more world problems. I think that when you think about more, sustainable solutions, and you think about things that matter most, getting into an area, because we're working on 100-year-old business model with financial services, right? So there's an immense opportunity, I think, to go beyond banking, whether that is to help, younger professionals with their employment opportunities, whether it's helping newcomers to Canada integrate better in their countries that they're moving into. And you do connect that back to banking, right? Because that really does feed into so much of the traditional financial services offers. But I think that in the next 24 months, we might be seeing more of that, where you can expect a bank to do just more than what you really would consider them for traditional banking services. David, final thoughts?
Yeah, I like what the world that Nidhi has just described and shown, and I think that's our goal for open banking and open finance and open data, open everything that we're moving towards. It's to provide more services that are helpful, allow people to feel that they are in control of at least some part of their lives during a global pandemic, but in general have the facilities they need to manage, to do well, to do better, to improve. As Nidhi just described, newcomers to this country, that they can pick up, where they left off at home, or maybe it's a step forward in a new direction. But it's providing those services, and so much of it being based on data. It will take time to roll this out, and we'll make mistakes, and we have to improve. But it's a lot of the time, it's just getting going and just begin. Get to know your customer, create services, at least, those MVPs of what they need and want, and then just keep the ball moving forward. And I like the possibilities that are in front of us, and I hope we capitalize and produce more of them than maybe our track record leads me to believe.
Well, on that optimistic note, David, I'd like to thank you and Nidhi as well for spending some time with us. I found the conversation very interesting. And I'd like to thank you, the viewer, as well. And anyone who's looking for more information about CGI services may, of course, visit cgi.com. Thank you to you both. Good day.
Great. Thank you, Derek.
Yeah.